Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erich Kurschat. I am the owner of Harmony Insights LLC, a company that allows me to work with organizations and consultants using the DISC personality assessment. And a lot of that is being done virtually these days online, completing assessments and bringing people together in workshops to talk about how they engage with one another and how they connect meaningfully in the workplace. I'm also the founder of HR Hot Seat, an inclusive mastermind community of, as we say it, real HR pros solving real HR problems in 10 different licensed chapters around the country. So if you're an HR pro or you serve HR professionals, you can check out HR Hot Seat and a local chapter near you at hrhotseat.com. Today, we are coming together in what I call a Harmony Insights lunch date. A few weeks ago, I decided I wanted to surround myself by people who inspire me, so that I can take 30 minutes out of my lunchtime, thus the lunch date here in the Central Time Zone, to get re-energized and reinvigorated, then go into my afternoon that much more inspired to do my best work. And so I thought, well, who can I invite along the way to join me for some of these lunch dates? And Kyra Matkovich is someone who has made the list. So Kyra, I want to welcome you to today's Harmony Insights lunch date.
Thank you. And this is so fun. I'm seeing all these familiar faces. Hey, Paul and Nicole and Claire and Amanda and Jessica we saw yesterday. This is so exciting. Hi, everybody. Jenny, this is great.
So Kyra, I've been really excited to have you on. You and I have had some fantastic conversations, just the two of us. You know, I'll get you on the phone and have, 15 or 20 minutes and for something fun. And then like an hour and a half later, we're finally
That's probably mostly my fault. I talk a lot.
And we've covered introversion and extroversion, and we've covered where we each live and what we're doing and how we're passing the time. And it's been fun getting to know you ever since, I want to say, around the time of the SHRM conference in 2018 here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. I think is when you were first got on my radar through something we may refer to along the way called the State Line Crew, through common friends. And it's just been fun talking ever since.
It has been. I agree that has been. And I'll add also that it's not just the phone calls. You also have been kicking my backside in Game Pigeon regularly.
Game Pigeon is a increasingly popular iPhone game app that allows you to play with each other through text messaging, and it's a blast. And
it is fun.
Why not learn something new these days? So I would love for people to learn more about you. I came to you and said, Kyra, I want you to be my lunch date. What do you want to talk about? And you said employee engagement. So what positions you, Kyra Matkovich, particularly well to speak today on the topic of, what did we call it? Keeping them engaged, an HR practitioner's passion and perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm not an expert in the area, but I've been in HR for 20 years. Currently, I'm the senior HR business partner, senior HR business partner for Exact Sciences in Madison. And I support a pretty large team now. I think I'm up to from all sites and all locations, almost 300 employees. And it's just an area that I'm super passionate about. I want to make sure that people are excited about the work that they do and that they feel connected to one another, their teams, the organization, the mission, and the values. And then, of course, the work that we do in the community. And specifically, I'm super passionate also about cancer, and our organization is primarily in the cancer space, and that's something that's also very personal to me. And so it's, it's just really making sure that people love the work that they do, and we keep them engaged while they're doing it.
We're going to get into, our conversation is going to cover some of the challenges that people may be facing right now, specifically related to engaging their workforce, but then also going forward as people come back to the offices. And we're going to also talk about some real distinct takeaways that you have for people, some actionable tips, experiences that you have had engaging team members in the past that you found to be particularly effective. I wanted to start out with a quick poll. So I'm going to put this up, just simply asking, Do you feel that your company has prioritized, or we'll even say been able to prioritize, employee engagement in recent weeks? Yes, somewhat, or not at all? And as people are responding to that, Kyra, we're all impacted in some way by the coronavirus.
Mhm.
If you're willing to share, how have you been personally impacted?
Uh, well, okay. I like to be flexible and adaptable. And, when we started seeing states literally shutting down, the first state with the team that I work with in California, when that state shut down, and then shortly after we started seeing this trickle effect with, the state of Wisconsin, our organization put a work from home order together, a directive that anybody who can perform their work from home to do so. And our organization is exempt from the, um, you know, we're considered an essential business because we work in the healthcare space, and so we still have people that are working on site in the facilities. Although we try to balance that with the number of people that are there. For me personally, um, because I'm able to do all of my work from home, I can do that. I've been doing that. And now I'm going into week 8. Tomorrow will be the end of week 8, working from home for 8 weeks. And this is just not how I operate at all. And it's been really challenging. I mean, it's not the work I feel is continuing, and I can be effective and I can be productive while I'm working from home. But for me, being in a virtual environment, it doesn't have the same impact, and particularly now that we're having everybody wearing masks and things like that. I mean, in the virtual environment, I can see you all from here up, but you're missing a lot in terms of the body language. There's a three-dimensional spatial type of situation that you're missing in a virtual environment. And the fact that I don't get to see my people every day. I want to see my people, I want
Yeah.
to, the hallway conversations, the hallway high fives. Our organization, we always had puzzles and different games and stuff that we would have out, and people would come out of their workspaces at various times throughout the day to get a cup of coffee and maybe work on a puzzle or some other games, and all that stuff has gone away. And I feel like we all feel that, and it's just a different. And plus, I am an extrovert, and while the whole virtual environment thing, I think Nicole and I have talked about this a little bit, but the whole virtual environment thing is fun. It's neat to be able to connect with people from around the world and from other locations in this way, which is great. But the novelty is kind of worn off as well. And I'm just, after 6 or 8 weeks now of being only with my family, as much as I love them, I really miss the three-dimensional, in-person, feeling the energy of the aura that people bring with them. I miss that a lot. And
Yeah.
that for me has been the most challenging thing. And so, going back to employee engagement, when I'm feeling the challenge of that and the difficulty, and it's getting me down to a certain degree, I have to make sure that I balance that with what are other people feeling, and am I adding to that, or can I help pull them out of that?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, you've already mentioned so many things that we can talk about. I'd love to share the results of the poll in the meantime. It looks like 30%, 36% of our audience has said yes, that they feel comfortable that their company is prioritizing employee engagement. 55% says somewhat, and then 9% says no, not at all. And
Wow.
I think it's easy perhaps to vilify those companies that aren't prioritizing company or employee
Mhm.
engagement until you stop to think how unprecedented this
Yeah.
whole thing is. And so I would imagine even those companies that really did it well beforehand have just been thrown for a loop trying
Yeah.
to figure out how to prioritize employee engagement, maybe something that's very important to them.
Yeah, totally agree there. I mean, I have seen some really horrific behavior from some leader, not in my organization, but from other friends in the organizations that they work in, or what they've experienced when their position got eliminated. I had a really good friend of mine who's been with an organization for 20 years, and she got laid off through email.
Mm.
Not even a personal phone call or something like that. And, no notice, no, team conversation about, hey, our organization has been hit really hard. And so later today, a few of you are going to receive emails, nothing like that at all. And it's really unfortunate, and I think you're right. We do vilify those leaders to a certain extent, because those of us that are in HR were like, oh, it always comes back to the people. It's about the people.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that well, that's a reflection of not only you as a leader, but also on the brand of your organization. Like, that could be really damaging. But at the same time, I have some empathy, because you're right. This is completely unprecedented. And I don't know that most leaders are in a place where they are prepared to make these types of business decisions in this type of environment. I mean, it's one thing that, you see an economy starting to go downhill a little bit, and maybe we need to adjust a couple of positions. But when you see just like that, an entire global economy, go into the tank, how do you respond to that? And how do you respond to, what is it, how many millions of people now that have applied for unemployment? And who's prepared for that? Who's prepared to change their business model? Who's prepared to close their business if they need to? Who's prepared to have really difficult conversations with an entire workforce about, I'm sorry, we're going to have to lay you off. And I know this is a really hard time for everybody, but, sorry, we're not able to pay. I mean, who's prepared for those types of things? And so it's really, I think, to provide a little bit of empathy for the leaders that maybe they're not doing it really well, but at the same time, hopefully they're learning in the process, and hopefully somebody can come alongside them and coach them through how to do this better in the future if we ever have to do something similar.
And it's likely probably easy for people to see why organizations and HR professionals, among others, would be challenged right now to prioritize employee engagement. What are your thoughts on even before all of this? I've spoken with people that have said, going back a number of years, that employee engagement has been one of those things that just has been difficult from the beginning. And something like this makes it much more difficult. But there are companies that have the best of intentions going into something like this that have never really got the engagement piece right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on employee engagement when we are not in a crisis like this?
That is a loaded question. I mean, intentions and reality are two totally different things.
Yeah.
I think, before all of this, I've worked in organizations that have done employee engagement really well. And I've been in organizations that they say they do, or they care about it, but they execute just very, very poorly, and has really quite the opposite effect.
Like, Kyra, we've done a survey. Our employees say that they're happy. We've done the work of getting the
Okay,
feedback.
well, there's two things there. One is if they say they're happy and they're actually not, then that is a trust issue. And, they're not likely being honest about it, because they feel like there's going to be some repercussion for being honest. And that's probably based in some historical behavior that has resulted in that, in my experience. If they're being honest and they respond to the survey, and let's also take it into consideration how many people are responding to the survey. Are you getting 10% of your workforce that are responding and saying they're really happy, and 90% aren't, and they're not responding at all? I mean, there's something in there that maybe we need to dig a little bit further. So there's a lot we could go into about that. But, if you are doing a survey and people are responding to that, and they're providing you with areas of critical feedback, areas that clearly the organization needs to look at, it's behoove the organization to look at them. Because, I've seen this happen too, where, okay, we'll do a survey and people respond to it and they're honest and it's critical, and there's all these different areas that maybe you need to prioritize, but then the leadership looks at that and said, oh, we're going to reject that, or that's not important, or they're lying, they're not being honest, or maybe it's the way. I worked in an organization once where the leadership was like, well, we didn't like the way that the question was worded. Really? You know what I mean? Like, there's excuses there. And so if you're not responding in a positive way and reinforcing like, hey, we care about that feedback, and these are the areas that you're telling us that we need to be better in. We're going to start prioritizing this, and we're not going to be able to, make sweeping changes and doing everything at once, but let's take these things one at a time. And maybe it requires doing some focus groups. Maybe in our organization we do focus groups. We also do we put together committees to really kind of take the information that was provided and what does this mean for the organization? What are some of the things that we could do that would address these particular areas? And when people feel like, okay, I've given you the feedback and now you're doing something about it and you're asking for more detail and providing us with something different, whether it works or not, like that's a positive, because
Yeah.
at least you're showing that now your action and your intention are matching up,
Yeah.
which is super important.
You mentioned committees. I've often used the word masterminds, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
space that I play in with HR Hot Seat and otherwise. And I've worked with companies and talked about, what would the value be to your organization of putting together a mastermind of folks that represent different departments. When you
Mm-hmm.
get the results of an engagement survey back, yes, it's often on HR to own those results and do something with them, but they can't be expected to act on them alone. And what if
Right.
what if your HR person was able to convene a mastermind or a committee of people from different
Mm-hmm.
um, departments who might not normally take part in a conversation like that and say, we care enough about these results that we want you actively involved in the solution. What are
Mm-hmm.
some things that you are thinking of related to some of the stuff that has come up that might not ever cross my mind as an
Yeah.
HR professional, and getting just some extraordinary responses from people that
Yeah.
you would never have anticipated.
That's exactly right. That is such an important perspective. I mean, I look at, clearly I'm biased. I mean, I've been in HR for a long time, and I think we are positioned very uniquely within the organization where we can literally touch every position, every person across the entire organization.
Hmm.
But we can't operate alone. It doesn't work that way. I mean, I look at HR as an enabling function. What can I do to enable professional development, to enable employee engagement, to enable better business decisions based on data or whatever? I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can look at that. And but I could get all the data, but I can't drive those changes across the organization. It requires leaders. It requires individual contributors. I mean, those people that are going to, it's like, hey, this was the feedback that you wanted, so how are you going to engage in this?
Hmm.
It takes everybody in there, and you want to have a solid sampling of people across the organization to speak into that, because you're absolutely right. I mean, you've got personality and expertise and all different things, different perspectives, and you can generate ideas that you never would have thought about, and they're so effective. I mean, they could be so completely innovative and new, or they could be, wow, this is really not new, but it's getting back to the basics and foundational type of interaction. I mean, talking, one of the things that I do, you'd asked earlier about what's effective, and literally just reaching out to people one on one to say, how are you? How are you really? How is this affecting you? How is this affecting your family? How is this affecting you personally and professionally? How is this affecting the way that you are able to connect with your leader and to connect with your team? Asking those questions, it's not innovative. I'm not using, I mean, I am using technology, but it's like we're not doing anything new. But to know that somebody is taking an interest in you personally and how this is affecting you feels different.
Yeah.
And it feels like, okay, I'm cared about and this matters. And those are the things that could potentially make a huge difference in the way that people engage.
It strikes me suddenly, I think hand in hand with engagement, you hear enablement and empowerment and some of that stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
you're talking right now in terms of being seen. And it
Mm-hmm.
strikes me suddenly that what better way to have people feel engaged than to have them feel seen and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledged?
Yep.
That, I could spend 15 minutes giving you every thought that I have on an engagement survey, keeping my fingers crossed that you'll do something with it. Um, but in a 5-minute conversation where you call me out of the blue and say, how are you? How are you
Mm-hmm.
responding to what's going on right now? And what could we be doing better as an
Mm-hmm.
organization? That'll blow my mind, especially probably if I'm at lower levels of the company where I don't feel
Mhm.
that I typically have a voice in what
Right.
goes on at those higher levels.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Um, our organization is pretty large, and we have a campus, and we've got buildings across Madison and in other locations, and each we have kind of the corporate culture, and then we have sort of these subcultures, within each of our facilities. And one of the facilities that I support is it's a research and development group, and we have an engagement team for that building specifically, and we call it the Triple E. It stands for Educate, Empower, and Engage. And those three things I think are really important, and that's one of the ways that we do that is by making people feel that we care about them as individuals. We reach out to individual people, hey, do you want to get involved? What are the types of things that you want to see? What would help you? And we were getting feedback that, we're in an R&D organization. People are, very highly educated. They're in very technical, complex type of work. I mean, we're talking scientists and engineers. And, there's this perception that because they are scientists and engineers, that they're introverted, and so therefore they don't need interaction with other people. And as well as I do, that is not accurate at
Let's
all.
squash
Just
that right
because
away.
exactly, like, to say that you're introverted does not mean that you don't want interaction with other people. And so it really is about how do we enable the type of interaction that is meaningful for that particular group. And the feedback that we get, I mean, one of the reasons why we do the puzzles and stuff is because that particular group, because the work that they do is so heady, it's very highly intellectual. And so they're totally in it. And they have these creative outlets. And so we've done things like glass ornaments. When we do some of the nonprofit support within the community, the cloth bags and stuff like that we could do for United Way, where people can go pick up groceries or whatever. Like we create artwork on these bags, and I mean we get such engagement with that. The puzzles, we do team games on Tuesdays at noon over the lunch hour, and the people that come out, I mean the way that we engage, that may not work at some other location. Maybe our sales team, because they tend to be a lot more on the extroverted side, like sitting and doing a puzzle probably doesn't appeal to them.
Hmm.
I don't know that. I'm just saying that as an example. But,
Hmm.
it's like, how are you going to get that information unless you're asking people specifically about what's important to them and how do they want to engage on an individual level?
So I want to come back to that in a moment. In the meantime, I want to acknowledge that Amanda has shared something, a formula that worked at a previous company of hers, where they formed a committee bringing people together from different departments,
Hmm.
high potential employees included, to
Hmm.
talk through some of the results of the survey, and then also be responsible for taking what the
Hmm.
company is doing back to their departments to say
Yep.
we've acted
Yep.
on some of this feedback. So that's a great transition. And in the time that we have left, which unfortunately is only a few minutes, let's focus right now on things that people can do or should be aware of as they continue to engage their employees while they are working remotely potentially, but
Hmm.
then also as we continue or we return back to offices.
Hmm.
Um, so Amanda has a great suggestion there.
Hmm.
I think we've touched on then kind of through her suggestion, the importance of reporting back to employees after a survey has been done or after you've
Hmm.
solicited their information to let them know
Hmm.
specifically what you're doing about it.
Hmm.
Um, I'd love your take, and I know this could go on for a while, so we'll keep it short. What is your take on making assumptions about how people want to engage, given what you value? So you mentioned yourself that you were extroverted. It would be so easy for you
Yeah.
to assume, okay, people want
Yeah.
to be engaged in the same way
Hmm.
that I do.
Hmm.
My guess is that would be a mistake. What is your thought?
I agree. Yes, totally. I mean, I think the danger is we make assumptions, and that goes into a similar vein as like biases and stuff like that.
Right.
We're making a lot of assumptions about a person's personality and what they like, or something along those lines. And the reality is, you're not going to know unless you ask. And so,
Yeah.
you want something to take away, and this is so simple. It may require some time on your part, depending on the size of the team that you support. Reach out to every single person. stop making excuses. You don't have to do it all on one day. I take maybe a half an hour in the morning, and I'll just, I have a list of all of my employees, and I put a date where I reach out to every single one. And every day I have a handful, and I reach out to, and then I recycle and I do it all over again. And it literally takes 3 minutes of my time, whether it's shooting an email to somebody, picking up a phone and calling them and just saying, hey, I wanted to check in on you. How are you doing? And then asking those types of questions. What are the ways that we can engage? What's working for you and your team? What's lacking? Do you feel like you're connected? And if you're not, what are some of the things that we could do to help make sure that you're connected with your people and that you're engaged? Because the reality is, like, if they're working and they're used to being around people and now they're in this virtual environment where there's zero interaction, like, productivity can totally tank.
Yeah.
Effectiveness, all of those things, efficiencies, all of those things are affected or are affected by this. And so it's really, brainstorming what's going to work, and what can we do to help that? I mean, what's going on at home that, may be challenging for you? Maybe we need to do an EAP referral or something along those lines. So I just think, to me, the biggest thing that you can do is pick up the phone, shoot an email, something, reach out to every single person and make that a personal connection.
I love this because we haven't been focusing our time talking about salary. We haven't been talking about benefits. And those are things that often come up in the employee engagement conversation. What you're talking about doesn't cost money except for your time,
Okay, so is this a recording that we can swear on? Is that appropriate or inappropriate?
I will leave it up to you. We're giving people the heads up right now that Kyra may be cursing in the near future.
I may be cursing. Okay, so let me just put it and this is like literally a 10-second comment. You can never pay somebody enough to put up with your shit.
Yeah.
And so if the work environment sucks, it doesn't matter how much you pay them. It doesn't matter how awesome your benefits are. You can pay them and continue to give them raises and everything, but if the work environment sucks, it won't matter. They will not engage, not to what you're expecting.
I love it. All right, we're gonna end on that because I think that's a great point to make. Kyra, this has been fantastic. It's already 12:30, and as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, people are going to need to leave now, and they're certainly welcome to. If anyone wants to stick around, they can, and unmute themselves, and we'll continue our conversation. In the meantime, you're going to be following up with me with links to resources that you think might be helpful to people. I will send those out via email to everyone who's attended today's conversation. It has also been recorded and, God willing, will be made available sometime soon. And I'll email everybody when recordings of these conversations do come out. For the people who will want to be in touch with you to pick your brain on certain activities that you've done or find out more about your philosophies behind employee engagement, how can they find you?
So I'm most active on Twitter, and that's at Kyra Matkovich HR. I'm also on LinkedIn. You just find me Kyra L. Matkovich. I'm probably the only Kyra Matkovich that you'll find on LinkedIn. So I'm pretty easy. And then I would stick with those. And then if you do want to connect on LinkedIn, instead of just sending me a connection request, if you personalize it a little bit so I know where it's coming from and how to engage, and it's not like a sales pitch, because you're not likely to get a very good response from me in that regard. Those are the two best ways to get a hold of me, and then we can go from there.
That's fantastic. Kyra, your input has been so valuable today. I really appreciate you being willing to be my lunch date.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. This was a lot of fun. I'm sorry that I didn't get to drink my coffee.
That's all right. You were busy.
So
No, you were busy. If the rest of you joining us were inspired by this conversation as much as I was, I hope you will come back. You will register for a future Harmony Insights lunch date. We have another one coming up tomorrow. That'll be pretty fantastic, as well as some next week. One that I'm really excited about is on May 15th, which is next Friday. I'm going to try something entirely new. I don't know that it's ever been done before. I don't know if I'm the first one to come up with this idea, but it's going to be a different take on panel discussions that reinforces that we all have equally valuable experience and perspective to share. And so I want to give it a try, and I think that this is the perfect venue for doing that. So that is next Friday, May 15th. And this is the very first time that I am able to announce that on Friday, May 22nd, my guest is going to be John Thurmond from the HR
Yay!
Social Hour Half Hour podcast. And I'm really excited to talk with John about finding new ways to nurture our professional communities. And anyone who knows John knows that he does that particularly well. So I'm thrilled about that conversation. Again, Kyra, thank you for joining us.